The man who owned this department store once stood in front of his own engineers and ordered them to slice the support columns thinner. Hours before the building fell, cracks split the ceiling wide open, and the store stayed open anyway, packed with customers. By the end of that day, 502 people in Seoul were dead, and almost none of it was an accident. In 1987, an architecture firm drew up plans for an ordinary 4-story apartment building on a quiet lot in Seoul district. Sampoong Group bought the site, and its construction chief, Lee Jun, decided a small apartment building would never make him enough money. He ordered the plans redrawn into a 5-story department store, tearing out support columns to make room for wide, open escalators. Building code required columns at least 31 inches thick. Lee Jun had them poured at 24 inches, spaced nearly 36 feet apart. A 5th floor was added too, planned first as a roller rink, then rebuilt as a restaurant with a heated stone floor called ondol. The original contractor, Woosung Construction, looked at the new plans and refused, warning that the building could not safely carry the extra weight. Lee Jun fired Woosung on the spot and finished the building himself, using Sampoong's own construction arm to pour the rest of it. The floors were flat slab construction, concrete resting directly on columns, no beams underneath, almost no margin for error. Inspectors later found columns reinforced with half the required steel bars placed off-center, cutting their real strength by roughly 1/5. On July 7, 1990, Sampoong Department Store opened its doors, and shoppers had no idea what stood beneath their feet. Within a few years, it became one of the most fashionable department stores in Seoul, drawing thousands of shoppers through its doors every day. To cool the crowded store, 3 massive air conditioning units went on the roof, each weighing 15 tons, far heavier than planned. In 1993, workers dragged the units across the rooftop to a new spot instead of lifting them by a crane, and the roof cracked. City officials who should have caught these violations looked the other way, accepting envelopes of cash from Sampoong to approve what should have failed. The heated restaurant floor kept adding weight, while the building's remaining columns absorbed stress they were never designed to hold. In April 1995, hairline cracks spread across the 5th floor ceiling in the south wing, small enough to ignore. Instead of shutting down for repairs, managers simply patched the ceiling and kept the 5th floor restaurant open for business as usual. When safety inspectors did show up, their checks were quick and shallow, rubber stamping a building that should have been condemned years earlier. By June of 1995, as many as 1,500 people could be inside the building on any given afternoon. Nobody outside a small circle of managers knew it, but the building's 5 floors were now quietly bending toward a single breaking point. That breaking point arrived on the morning of June 29, 1995, a day that started like any other at Sampoong. By mid-morning, the cracks on the 5th floor had grown dramatically overnight, spreading across the ceiling in jagged lines several inches wide. A structural engineer was called in to look, and after only a brief inspection, warned that the entire building was at risk of collapse. Store managers weighed the warning against a single day's sales and decided the store would stay open, packed with customers, regardless. By early afternoon, some of the cracks in the 5th floor slab had widened to nearly 4 inches, wide enough to see straight through. About 5 hours before the collapse, loud bangs began echoing from the top floors, sounds workers would later describe as the building groaning. Vibrations from the rooftop air conditioners widened the cracks further. Workers finally switched them off, but the damage was done. Employees finally cleared customers off the dangerous fifth floor, but the floors below stayed open, still crowded with shoppers who suspected nothing. With collapse now looking inevitable, Sampoong's executives gathered for an emergency meeting to decide what to do about the people still inside. Several directors urged a full evacuation of staff and customers, but Lee Jun refused, worried about losing an entire day of revenue. The meeting ended with only a partial fix: seal off the worst damaged section, but let the rest of the store keep operating. As the meeting broke up, Lee Jun and several top executives quietly made their own way toward the exits, ahead of anyone else. None of the shoppers browsing below had any idea the people who ran the building were already leaving without them. At 5 o'clock, the fifth floor ceiling visibly began to sink, and workers rushed to block off the last remaining customer access to that floor. Down on the lower floors, a handful of staff noticed the vibrations underfoot and began quietly urging customers near them to leave. At 52 minutes past 5, cracking sounds tore through the building and alarms finally blared, far too late for most people. The roof gave way first, sending the massive air conditioners crashing straight down onto the already overloaded fifth floor below them. In less than 20 seconds, the main columns beneath the fifth floor snapped, one after another, like dominoes falling in sequence. The store's entire south wing collapsed straight down into the basement, floor crashing onto floor until almost nothing was left standing. A massive cloud of dust and debris rolled out over the street as screams rose from the wreckage where the store had stood. Roughly 1,500 people had been inside the building. Hundreds now lay trapped beneath tons of broken concrete and twisted steel. Within minutes, sirens filled the street as police, firefighters, and bystanders rushed toward the wreckage to pull survivors free. By morning, cranes had arrived, and thousands of soldiers, firefighters, and volunteers dug through the rubble by hand. Officials briefly called off the search, fearing further collapse, until furious protests from waiting families forced them to continue. Engineers even had the phone network send a signal every 30 minutes, hoping to trigger any pager or phone still buried beneath the wreckage. 2 weeks in, officials declared the rescue phase over, certain that no one could still be alive, but they were about to be wrong. On the 11th day, rescuers pulled 21-year-old Choi Myung-suk from the wreckage alive, stunning a nation that had almost given up hope. A day later, teenager Yoo Ji-hwan emerged after 12 days in a gap barely wider than her shoulders, alive against all odds. 17 days in, 19-year-old Park Sung-hyun was found alive with only minor scratches, the last survivor pulled from the ruins. When the recovery finally ended, the toll stood at 502 dead, 937 injured, and 6 people never found. That December, Lee Jun was tried for criminal negligence and sentenced to 10.5 years, later reduced to 7.5. His son, Lee Han-sang, who ran the store as its chief executive, was convicted alongside him and sentenced to 7 years. City officials who had taken bribes to overlook the violations were convicted too, one of them sentenced to 10 years for a single payoff. The disaster forced South Korea to rewrite its building safety laws and re-inspect hundreds of structures thrown up during the same construction boom. Lee Jun was released from prison in poor health and died in October of 2003, just months after walking free. Today, a quiet memorial stone in a Seoul park lists the names of the dead, a small monument to a disaster built by choice. Prophet outran caution in Seoul. Decades earlier, in a Texas port town, the same warnings went ignored, with deadlier results.